Unquestionably, the number one concern around sex that I hear from guys over the last 6 years, I've heard it over and over and over again, is stamina. It's having control. It's avoiding something like you're so excited to be with your partner and your partner is excited to be with you. And 2 minutes in, you ejaculate and you're just devastated. And it creates this weird energy and your energy's down and you're so let down. It can really be devastating for guys. I think it's probably the most heartbreaking thing in terms of what I've heard from you guys and what I've experienced at previous times in my life as well. It really can be kind of devastating. Here's the thing. You've probably tried some stuff. If you're listening to this, you've probably tried some stuff to improve it. And maybe you have improved it, or maybe you haven't. Maybe you've been trying things for years, maybe many years, and nothing has changed. I promise you it absolutely can change. I also promise you it's very likely that it's not that you haven't tried hard enough. It's not that you're somehow broken. It's not that you can't change it or fix it. It's that you just haven't had a plan. It's really hard to get somewhere. I'm up in the mountains right now. If you're watching on video, you can see this. It's really hard to like navigate our way somewhere if we don't have some idea of where we're going and how to get there. So in the next few minutes, I want to give you a plan, a framework for sexual stamina so that you understand the big picture and you understand the key pieces that you need to put together, because we don't need to be perfect, but we do need to have these 3 pillars of this framework in place, because much like the pillars of a structure, if even one of them is sufficiently broken, the whole thing can come crashing down. We don't need to be perfect in any of the 3, but we need to have these 3 areas solid enough. And when we do, it completely changes things. So let's talk about it. Now, one thing to clarify is there's always going to be variations. We're human beings, right? You are a human being. Part of the human experience is that things change. They change moment to moment. They change hour to hour. They change day to day. So your sensitivity in terms of how sensitive you are to stimulation, your libido, your erections, and yes, your control will change from day to day. However, what it's about, if we're going to really improve this, it's about changing our baseline. So right now you're at some kind of baseline and there's variation in that. We can completely upgrade that baseline. So you're on a whole new level. And yes, there's variation, but it's a whole new baseline. And it is incredibly rewarding work. And I use that word work very intentionally because this doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen just like wishing. It's not something that I can give you and you push the button and you're like, yes, I have great control. No, it's something you need to actually put in the reps. And it's not hard physical work, but it is work. Even something like getting in touch with our own inner world, which we'll talk about as one piece of this, it's work because we need to actually lean into it with intention. We need to be willing to give it our energy and our focus. And in some cases, lean into stuff that's kind of hard to move through. Let's talk about what the 3 pillars of this framework are. There are 3 M's, actually. The first M is muscles. So our pelvic floor, I often call it our root muscle, even though it's not a muscle. It is a whole bunch of muscles that all work together, and they go all the way back, and they wrap around your anus, and they go across your perineum, and there's these muscles that wrap up around the base of the penis. And then there's these muscles that are next to that area, like the psoas, that actually have an impact as well. But the muscular component of this is very, very important. It's the first pillar. Let's talk about a couple of details of that. So our root muscle, here's the reason why this is a really, really important piece is when you ejaculate, what happens? There is a muscular contraction. And what happens when you ejaculate when you're not wanting to is those muscles contract when you're not wanting them to. So we need to do a few things so that those muscles can actually work for us instead of working against us, because you've probably felt at some point, maybe in many times, you felt those muscles kind of work against you, where it's the last thing you want to have happen. And here they are firing off, doing their thing. Next thing you know, that experience with sex is over. So there's a few things to keep in mind when it comes to the muscular pillar of the sexual stamina framework. One is relaxation. This is so fundamental because most guys, almost all guys, carry so much excess tension in this pelvic floor that it's never really fully relaxed. And because it's never really fully relaxed, it just instantly at times wants to and very easily goes into this state of contraction. So the first thing to practice, or the first part of that muscular pillar, is relaxation. How do we do that? Well, a couple of ways. One is to intentionally just let go of tension. Here's the second part when relaxation is going to actually play into it is awareness. It's consciousness. It's actually developing an awareness of what your root muscle, and I'm going to call it your root muscle from this point forward, just to be clear. Again, it's a bunch of muscles. Think about it as your root. Simple is good, right? So throughout the day, you want to bring your awareness and have kind of this background awareness with your root muscle and what is happening with it. Similar to how you might have awareness of your posture, right? Where you can be sitting, you and I could be sitting and having a conversation. And even though you're listening to me in that conversation, you might kind of have some background awareness of you're like, oh, I'm kind of slouching, and you sit up because you have this little background awareness that's paying attention to your posture. Well, we want to develop a background awareness of our root muscle and have this awareness throughout the day as often as possible, where you understand what it's actually doing. And what you will likely find when you do that is that two things. One, it's holding on to excess tension almost all the time. So if you tune into your root muscle right now, and I know for some of you guys, you're going to know exactly what that means and how to connect with that with your mind and with your awareness. And for some of you, you may be in a place where you're like, what do I even do? Think about the muscle that you would hold if you were going to squeeze in and stop peeing, right? You're peeing midstream, you're going to squeeze. Those are kind of the muscles, right? So tune into those muscles right now and relax. Just let go a little bit. I can almost guarantee you, even if you're someone who's been on this journey for a long time, I'll bet you can let go of a little bit of tension right now, which means you were holding a little bit of tension, and maybe you're holding a lot of attention. So throughout the day, you have this awareness and you tune into your root over and over again, and you let go over and over again. But it's not just enough for that muscle to be relaxed, because if a muscle is really going to serve us, think about your bicep muscle, your hamstring, or anything that you might think about in terms of normal kind of physical strength, right? In order for a muscle to serve us, it does need to be relaxed, because a muscle that's not relaxed is not healthy. A tight muscle is almost never healthy muscle. And a tight muscle is usually a weak muscle. And that's the other part of it is strength. It's strength and control. We'll bring it back to the control piece in just a moment. But strength is absolutely crucial, because strength affects how much energy flows through that area. It affects your libido. It affects your overall sexual energy. It affects your erections. And it does also affect your ability to work with and control your sexual energy, partially because when you have more strength, you can draw more of that sexual energy up into the rest of your being, out of that sexual center where it can be stored in the rest of your being. You have unlimited capacity to store this energy, but in our sexual center, there is a very limited capacity to actually store that sexual energy there. So the strength piece is very, very important. How do you build strength in that muscle? Well, you exercise it. So in your mindful edging practice, especially if you're having longer sessions, and depending on how you're approaching those sessions, you're going to likely build some root strength. And then the other thing is you just do exercises, meaning you do Kegels and reverse Kegels to balance things out. By the way, go back in the archives, go to Spotify, search Kegel. You're going to find a bunch of previous episodes where I talk about details. In fact, you're going to find a bunch of previous episodes where I talk about details on all of these pillars. So I'm not diving into a lot of detail now. What I want to give you is the big picture and understanding what these three pillars are and kind of the most important things in each one of them. So in this muscular pillar, it's relaxation, it's building strength, and then it's actually putting those two together, meaning having control. Is it relaxed or is it contracting? That control comes from practicing Kegels and reverse Kegels. It comes from tuning in and having better awareness and better mind-body connection. So when you build the relaxation side and you build that connection with this muscle and your ability to not only strengthen it and contract it, but also to relax it, now you have control. So moment to moment, whether you're in your edging practice or you're having sex, moment to moment, you're going to be able to actually decide with intention, what is that muscle doing? Or what is that group of muscles that make up your root? What is it doing? Is this a moment where I want it to be relaxed? Is this a moment where I want it to actually contract and draw some of that energy up into my body as you work with that kind of a practice? So the first pillar is the muscular component. The second pillar of sexual stamina for you as a man is your mind. It is your mind. It's your mind. And I'm going to loop in with that your emotions, because really when I say mind, what I mean is our inner world. And again, you might have the first pillar and then the last pillar we're going to talk about in a moment. You might have both of those kind of in place, But if your mind and emotions are off doing their own thing, if you can't control them and guide them, if you don't have a connection with and an attunement to your inner world, it is going to be very hard to have sexual stamina, because having stamina is about nuance. It's a nuanced kind of thing, right? It's not a very simple take a hammer, hit a nail kind of thing. It's a nuanced thing to be able to work with your body, to be able to work with this energy and all the things that affect it. One of those things is your mind and your emotions. Let's talk about how it can kind of derail that, and then a couple things to focus on to make it much better so that this pillar is strong. It can derail it in really one of a couple of ways. One is just your presence. So if your awareness gets pulled off into some other place or some other time or some other idea, then what is happening right now in front of you and with you and inside of you and with your partner, if your awareness gets pulled off to other places, the more it gets pulled off, the more you're going to lose control, because you can't possibly control your root muscle and that energy and guide that and listen to your own body and listen to your partner's body and listen to your partner's energy. You can't possibly listen and guide all of that if your awareness is off on, some bill that's got to be paid tomorrow, or it's off on that last experience that you had where you didn't last, and you just get stuck in this loop where all you can think about is that previous experience. Well, if that's what you're thinking about, most likely it's going to happen again, not only because that's kind of the vision that you're setting for this automatic mechanism that we have inside of us, but also simply because your presence isn't right now. So the first part of the mind pillar is presence. It is practicing day by day by day, moment by moment, bringing your awareness back to right now, this moment. My favorite way to do this, and I think the simplest way, you might not have a meditation practice. If you don't, start meditating. It's actually what meditation can bring to your life is incredible. Do not underestimate how amazing and awesome and exciting meditation actually is, and connecting with your inner world actually is. But the most simple way to come back to right now is your physical senses. Bring yourself back to right now. You can practice this right now by actually tuning into your physical senses. What do you hear? What do you actually see? You might be looking at something, like if you look around, if you're watching on video, look away from the screen, look at the physical surroundings that you're in, and actually notice the detail. You're sitting in your car, you're sitting in your house, your office, wherever. How often do you actually look at the detail of what you're seeing and paying attention to it? Feel into your feet on the ground or your butt on the chair. Feel into your physical senses, because your physical senses are where right now is. And they are a very, very effective path to come back to right now. Feel into your physical senses. So the first part of the mind inner world pillar is presence. The other part is being able to actually deal with and accept and effectively work with the range of emotions that comes up. And this is something that it is a skill. It takes practice. It takes work over time. 99.9999% of humans are not somehow automatically built or born with the ability to do this effectively. We learn this. Some people maybe learn it as kids because they have influences from their parents or from other people. For a lot of us, it is up to us to develop this ability. We intentionally practice being better at working with emotions that come up, including really strong emotions. So if a strong emotion comes up and it just throws you for a loop, and you get so off center that it takes you away from your center, or whatever is happening right now in your moment, or in the moment, or whatever emotion you were feeling, something comes up and it just sweeps you away. You get swept up in the storm. If that happens and you don't have the ability to bring yourself back, then what is likely going to happen is you're going to be having sex and some strong emotion is going to come up. Maybe it's not a bad emotion or a negative emotion, not that any of them are bad, because they all serve us. Maybe it's even emotion like you're actually just feeling into how in love you are with the person that you're having sex with. If that emotion kind of sweeps you away because it's so strong and you can't actually stay with what's happening right now, again, you're going to have a tendency to kind of lose control. So second pillar is mind. The two big pieces of that are presence, being able to come back to right now over and over and over again and rest in nowness for as many moments as possible, and having practices to bring you back to that. And then the other part is dealing with emotions effectively. And A big part of this, again, is meditation. It's not the only part. Often, part of this is actually just sitting, walking, journaling, talking with a friend, doing the things to actually understand our inner world a little bit better, especially on the emotional part. Some of this is actually just kind of conscious thought and deconstructing what is happening in your inner world. But the reason that meditation is so key is meditation allows you to observe. And we can't understand and change and improve our inner patterns and our ways of dealing with emotions if we can't observe them. If we're in them, if we're just, it's like they're all around us and we're just getting swept around and pulled around by these emotions, we're not going to be able to actually understand them. To be able to understand them and work with them effectively, we need to zoom out a little bit, get back to a place of being an observer. And then once we can observe them, now you're going to start to see patterns. You're going to start to have awareness of, oh, that's how I kind of get triggered by that particular emotion every time, or this is the emotional pattern that I'm in, or this is what happens when this particular emotion comes up within me. Whatever it looks like, it's the observing that allows you to work with it. So meditation, intentional work in your inner world. All right, so first pillar, the muscular component, it's your root muscle, relaxation, strength, and control. The second pillar, your mind, your emotions, your inner world. It's presence, it's now-ness, and it's having the ability to effectively work with emotions. And by the way, I'll just throw in there, you know what else is part of that? Being able to effectively work with the emotions of your partner. Because if your partner experiences some emotion or communicates some emotion, or you feel it in your partner, and that also takes you off and you get swept away by it, it's going to derail you too, right? So part of this inner work is not only being able to effectively work with our own inner emotions, but also to communicate on an emotional level effectively, to listen on an emotional level effectively. Let's talk about the last pillar. The last pillar is motion. Here's the thing. Sex is about stimulation, having stamina and control. You're being stimulated, right? And the patterns and the habits that we're in as far as how you are stimulating have a major impact on your ability to have control. Here's what I mean by that. Let's talk about one important example. And this is actually the first key in the motion or stimulation pillar. It's the first key to keep in mind, and that is to slow down. So if you're anything like me or virtually every guy I've ever talked to, your initial experiences with masturbation and with ejaculating were getting there as quick as you possibly could, right? Maybe you were hiding, you had a bunch of shame or guilt that may not have come till later, but it was probably about as quick as possible, right? It was get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. You may even still have some of that in your practice right now, right? So maybe you do have an edging practice. It is more intentional. You've set down the porn, you're connecting with yourself, but still you're kind of racing to those real high arousal levels. Or you don't really have a mindful edging practice. Maybe you're still in kind of that porn world. You're still in that just get off as quickly as possible. Well, if we want to have stamina when we're with a partner and we want that experience to be longer, it doesn't make any sense to practice really, really short experiences. So if you have this vision in your mind of having sex for an hour with your partner, which by the way is so doable. I know there's guys, you may be one of them, where you're hearing that and you're like, dude, I last 2 minutes. Are you kidding me with an hour? It's like 2, 3, 4 minutes and that's it. I promise you, no matter where you are right now, you can have the kind of control where you can basically go indefinitely. And of course, experiences always have to wrap up because everything in life is temporary, but you can have that kind of control, right? So if you're wanting to have a longer experience like that with a partner, but when you masturbate, it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, that's what you're practicing, right? Because we're guys, I'm not a big fan of pro sports other than baseball at the moment, and only because my nephew plays for the Cleveland Guardians. Go Guards. Daniel Schneemann, he's there typically, depending on the opposing pitcher, usually starts for them at second base, kicking ass recently. Anyway, I'm not generally a pro sports fan, but sports provides for some good analogies. If you were wanting to be a major league pitcher, right? Do you think that you could go out and effectively pitch in a major league game and throw a 98-mile-an-hour fastball if the only thing you ever practiced was 40-mile-an-hour lobs to your friend? You practice that over and over and over and over and over again, hours every day, 40 miles an hour, lobs, right? Is that ever, no matter how much you practice it, is it ever going to get you to where you can throw that 98-mile-an-hour fastball? Nope, it's not. We have to practice like we want to play. The same thing applies to sex, right? So if you're practicing 2 minutes, 5 minutes, but you're dreaming of an hour, that doesn't work. Now, it doesn't mean that every time you have an edging session that it needs to be an hour. It doesn't mean that at all. But what it does mean is slowing down is a huge piece of this motion or stimulation pillar. Here's another one. Literally how you are stimulating in terms of how your cock is being stimulated, on what parts of it, and what that motion is actually like. Let me tell you very simply what I mean by that. Again, if you're anything like me and 99% of the guys I've talked to, it may be that almost the entire history of your masturbation practice, or at least at the beginning, was sort of the default that a lot of guys find their way to, which is what I call underhand, right? So your thumbs up and like your pinky's down, and that's against your body. And that's the way that the majority of guys masturbate. I've talked to so many guys about this stuff, thousands of conversations. It's very, very consistent. Here's what we need to understand about that is when you make that motion, but this is one of those moments when video might be helpful, by the way. If you've been listening, you might want to just take a moment if you're on Spotify to get on video. If you're making this motion, this underhand motion, and you have at the top this ring that your index finger and your thumb are making, right? What happens when you stimulate that way is your index finger and your thumb create the most kind of tension, the most pressure is from that. And then from there, it kind of opens up. So if you think about, and I'm going to give you this very crude demonstration with my finger, right? So if you think about this is your cock and you're masturbating in that normal underhand way where your thumb is up, you have this pressure at the top. That's where the most pressure is. And it never really goes down very far because that's where this less pressure area is. Well, the thing we need to understand is that's actually the opposite of what happens when you penetrate a partner. When you penetrate a partner, you have this tighter piece and then it kind of opens up from there, right? So what can be incredibly helpful is simply adding practice with an overhand stroke to your edging practice. So you flip your hand around, your thumb and your index finger are towards your body, which is the opposite. And it might be kind of funky initially, might be kind of funky with your arm, and you don't need to do this all the time. It's not like you can never do the underhand stroke ever again. But when you do that overhand stroke, now what you're doing is you're practicing more like you want to play because you're creating a type of stimulation that is more like what happens when you penetrate a partner. So you have, when you're in that overhand stroke, you have that tighter part at the very beginning, and that tighter part at the very beginning ends up going all the way down to the base, just like it's going to when you penetrate a partner. And then it kind of opens up from there towards the tip, just like it's going to when you penetrate a partner. This alone, you might have a meditation practice. You have good control of your root muscle. You even have a mindful edging practice on a regular basis. If you include more overhand type of stimulation, you will invariably develop better control because you're practicing more the type of stimulation that's going to happen when you're having sex. The last piece of the motion is actually motion. So again, if you're anything like almost every guy I've ever spoken with, as guys, typically we masturbate, your body is still, your cock is still, your hand is moving, right? You might be sitting, laying down, standing, whatever. Your hand's moving. Your body's not. What happens when you go to have sex with someone? Your body's moving most of the time, depending on the position. Most likely, most of the time, your body's moving, you're thrusting, you're having this motion go on. So if you never practice that, and you only ever practice your body being still and your hand moving, again, you're not really practicing like you want to play, right? So the last piece of motion is include, again, it does not have to be by any means exclusively this, like you can only be actively thrusting into your hand with your edging practice, not at all. Include it though, right? Include that type of stimulation. And maybe if you're really wanting to build your stamina and it really, really matters to you, you include some overhand stuff, you include some of that thrusting into your hand more as opposed to just moving your hand. You do more of this, you add more of it if you're really wanting it to change. If you're pretty happy with where you're at right now, maybe you just kind of start mixing this in a little bit more. Either way, I would recommend that I would advise you this is a F around and find out situation. And what you will likely find out is when you start to include some of this stuff, your control is going to change and you're probably going to be motivated to do more of it. So let's do a quick recap. What are the 3 pillars of this framework of having sexual stamina and control? First is muscle. It is the root muscle. It's having it be relaxed, having it be strong, and having good control of it, where it doesn't do its own thing. You guide it. The second pillar is mind and emotions. It's your inner world. It's being present with right now. It's having the ability to work with your own emotions. It's having the ability to work with your partner's emotions and to be able to communicate effectively on an emotional level and not get swept away by those emotional storms. The third pillar is motion. It's how are you stimulating? Are you rushing through your masturbation practice? Are you stimulating in a way that's completely unlike the way that you're going to end up being stimulated when you have sex? You start to work with those. You start to put these 3 pillars together. Again, it is not about perfection. It does not require a ton of time. You can have a meditation practice that can start to significantly improve things in so many ways that meditation affects our life. In 5 to 10 minutes, you can have a 5 to 10 minute edging practice that can be hugely beneficial. You can take 5 to 10 minutes while you're driving, while you're sitting in the office, while you're anywhere to do some Kegel exercises. And throughout the day, with no time investment at all, only with an awareness investment, you can develop more of that mind-body connection where you have more consciousness and awareness of your root muscle and what's actually happening there. I promise you this can absolutely change. It's changed for me. I've had so many experiences in my life where it was devastatingly short. Devastatingly short. In fact, I actually have an episode, if you go back in the archives, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I have an episode where I had a particular time happen that was well into this journey when I generally had really good control. And it was the first time that I was with someone who meant quite a bit to me at the time, for sure. And it was ridiculously awful, right? So that rarely happens anymore. Now, what I generally experience is I have as much control as I want to. And that's not a limiting factor in how long sex lasts. You can be in that same place. It does not have to be a limiting factor. You can have as much control, you can have unlimited control if you put these pillars into place with a little bit of practice. So the muscle, the mind, the motion, put those 3 pillars into place. I promise you it will change. If you tune into this, it's very likely that 1 or 2 of those pillars at least are like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that, or haven't really been practicing that, or I didn't really recognize how much that might actually be impacting it. Again, I can tell you, if any of these 3 pillars is sufficiently kind of broken right now, it's going to bring the whole structure down. It's going to really affect you. They don't need to be perfect. They just need to be kind of strong enough, right? So have those practices in each one of these 3 pillars. Go back in the archives, go to Spotify, search Kegels, search Root, search meditation. You start to dive into some of those details if you want to. I know for a lot of you guys, if you've been listening to the show for a while, which thank you, by the way, for spending a little bit of time with me today. And especially thank you to you guys who've been listening to this show and been with me for a long time now. It's been almost 6 years, I guess 6 years this fall that I've been doing this show and connecting with you guys and benefiting and having such a blessing in my life from connecting with you guys. So thank you. But if you go back in the archives, you can find so many more details on all of this. I can absolutely work with you in one-on-one coaching on this. So if you go to my website, you'll find coaching options there. I can work with you. That can be extremely beneficial on an accountability level, on an understanding, kind of getting that observer place, right? Because if you're swept up in all the stuff that's going on, it's hard to observe it. That can be beneficial as well. Regardless of what it is, there are additional resources available to you to dive into more details on this. And even if you don't do that in this moment, merely having the big picture of what these 3 pillars are, you're going to start to see things a little differently, and you're going to start to understand, oh, this is maybe what's kind of derailing it. And if you put in the effort, it does take some effort, awareness, managing our awareness, that's its own kind of effort. So it does take some effort to practice this stuff, but if you put it in, you put in that effort, you do it consistently over time, you can have as much stamina as you want. And I can promise you, it is so amazing in what it will do for your relationships, because sex is not just about the moment and the pleasure in the moment. It's about connection. It's about connecting with your partner. And you can connect so much more deeply with your partner in 20 minutes or half an hour or an hour or multiple hours than you can in 2 minutes. Period, right? Can you get the same workout physically in your body, a strength training session, can you get the same workout in 2 minutes that you can get in 45 minutes? No, you can't. Can you connect with your partner on a deep, soulful, heart-based level in 2 minutes the same way that you can in 45 minutes? No, you can't. It matters. This stuff matters. It matters for you. I have a feeling it matters for your confidence, right? And for so many of your inner emotions, it matters for how you connect with your partner. And in the end, it matters for actually how strong the relationship is, because this is one of, if not the foundational piece of a relationship. One of the things that makes an intimate relationship different than every other relationship that we have is this is the person that we're having sex with, we're getting into this place with. And that is, in a lot of ways, the place where we go the deepest. It is the place where we connect in the most powerful way. It's not the only one by any means, but is a very, very important one. So work on this stuff. I'm here to support you. Thank you for taking some time to be with me, sending you amazing vibes. Have an awesome rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon.